All right, and now we are recording.
Perfect.
So, hi everybody, my name is Max,
My name is Greg.
and we met each other selling cars and have become good friends and just thought about putting stuff on the internet and having fun.
Yep,
So,
pretty much.
but little background about each of us. Start with, welcome to go first, do your thing.
Yeah, sure. My name is Gregory. I've been selling cars since 2014. Prior to that, I attended Arizona State University. Have pretty much lived in Arizona my entire life. Was in Tucson until I was about 10 and been in Phoenix ever since. And I don't know, got out of college, started selling cars, fell in love with it, been doing it ever since. Prior to selling cars, I was big into aviation, so still sticking with the, I guess, mechanical side of things, liking, growing up, I like World War II tanks and, stuff like that. I was always into big tractors and caterpillars and, I just like forms of transportation, I guess. Trains included. So, that's pretty much my whole background, I guess.
There you go. Total side note before I give my background. Did you know the TV show The Grand Tour, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you see who they announced last week as like the three new hosts?
No.
So it's two really popular Throttle House review guys, and it's this other kid on Instagram who just videos him spotting trains. Like his thing is trains, and he's now on a car show. It's kind of wild, actually.
I think that's interesting, and I guess it just goes to show, like, even yourself, I think you like aviation to some extent, and realistically, like, if you're into the whole transportation side of things, there's no discrimination.
Nope.
If you like cars, you're more than likely going to like planes, and you're more than likely going to like trains.
Some guy obsessed with trains on the internet is now presenting a TV show, or will be. Here, let me adjust this up. I think the audio is going down.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. All right, that should be better.
That was
See,
my
it was
first
kind
time
of.
doing anything like this, so I'm sure we'll have some bugs we'll have to figure out.
Yep. See, it's already better. It was kind of flatlining a little bit, but we'll get there. So, my name is Max. I am. Funnily enough, I have a Christian theology degree, and I am now a somewhat whiskey enthusiast, and have been in the car business since 2015. I currently buy cars for a living and have been a used car manager. I've done that whole thing, and it's my passion in life. So Greg and I are just both car and transportation nerds. He's the guy I text when I see random really clean vehicles that people don't care about that I think are awesome. I send Greg random texts of like nice barn door Suburbans. This is my cat. She's overly friendly, so she'll be on video every now and then. But yeah.
And I do the same. I definitely send you wild stuff.
He does.
That crazy Volvo that came in. Showroom condition Volvo.
What was it, a 95 Volvo 540?
Yeah, it was something like that. It was like a 95. It had the straight 5-cylinder in it. And I mean, this thing was, at least on the interior, showroom condition. I mean, the car looked brand spanking new.
40,000 miles, was it?
36,000 miles. Funny enough, though, I think we ended up finding out that there was definitely an issue with the way the odometer rolled.
Oh.
And it only clocked like 1 mile for every 4. So it's probably about 4 times that. But even so, the guy took good care of it.
Swedish car problems, am I right?
Yeah, no kidding. Well, and hey, I mean, that engine, as long as you put oil in it, that thing runs forever, so.
I do miss the 5-cylinder. I mean, technically, I'd have to do some research, but technically the 5-cylinder is dead at this point, at least in normal cars.
The only one that still is around is the Audi.
The RS3?
Yep, the RS3. And
I think
initially,
that's it.
when that came out, there were good reviews about it, but longevity-wise, there's been some concerns. At least that's my understanding. But
Yep.
yeah, that is still a dream. That is a bucket list item still for me, is to own a 5-cylinder, because it's just so unique.
There are some fun ones. I mean, mostly German, funnily enough.
Yep.
But a couple of those Swedish cars. Volvo had a bunch of them for a while.
Well, and I think the original Quattro was a 5-cylinder.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they short-lived. So
Very short-lived. But we'll see what happens with that. Speaking of 5, though, did you hear last week the 5-speed, the new 5-speed is dead. No more new 5-speed transmissions
Yeah, no,
in the
and
US.
that was even, I mean, realistically, the 5-speed, I don't even remember the last car you could buy brand new with a 5-speed. If you were getting manual, it was a 6, you know, and that kind of developed when I started getting into the industry. But I mean, I fear for the manuals in general. I definitely will always be a proponent of manual transmission cars. And if they get to a point where you can't get a single brand new car with a manual transmission, I promise you I will be scouring the used car market. And it will be interesting to see when that happens, because I think that is an inevitability. If that happens, it'll be interesting to see if the value of those manual pre-owned cars skyrockets or if they just stay the same, if really there is no desire for manuals in this country.
It's not great. I mean, if I remember correctly, 2 years ago I read a report that like 1.2 of all vehicles CarMax sold were manuals on the pre-owned. But on the new, it's similar. So the Versa, up until last week, they killed the Versa. That was the last remaining 5-speed in the U.S. market. They killed it.
So believe it or not, when I've been doing some new car shopping because I got rid of my Jetta. And you know what I'm whipping around now. I got a manual transmission 04 Nissan Frontier. Love it.
It's perfect.
It's great. It's not showroom condition, but it's very well taken care of. And I was looking at what you could get brand new for manual. And there was a Nissan dealership that had a manual transmission Versa. And I was this close to considering buying it. I really was. And I know most people think I'm crazy and I go from a Jetta GLI, you know, to a Versa, but there's just something to be said about tried and true, reliable, fuel efficient, no bells and whistles. Just this is strictly transportation. Like, you're not going to be comfortable in it. You're not going to do anything fancy with it, but it will get you where you want to go and it will do it for a long dang time.
Yep. So the Versa 5-speed, not only was it the last 5-speed, it was the cheapest manual. I suspect it was just too much money to R&D, and Nissan's already a failing brand. But anyway.
Oh, dude, Nissan's in trouble.
Yeah. I read an article about a month ago from Automotive News that the only market that they have to cut expenses is the U.S. market, and it's their only profitable market. It's a terrible position to be in. But anyway, the next cheapest manual, if I remember correctly, is doubled in MSRP, which is quite interesting. You know, you go from a $18,000 car. But I do, you know, the Versa is an interesting car when you think about it, because I was a buyer for a Nissan dealership. I've worked for, Nissan in the past, not corporate, but franchises. I have a strong suspicion that, yes, they had some issues with the CVTs, like 16 to 19, especially in the Sentras. But I have a sneaking suspicion their bad rep isn't necessarily their own reliability problems. I think a lot of it has to do with the owners. That's my theory. Because we see Pathfinders come in with the V6 and they've got 25,000 miles and they have sludge damage. And then you see 250,000 mile cars that are running strong. And it's probably because the secondary credit customer that bought the first one never changed the oil.
Yep.
And I suspect that that's the theory behind Nissan. They're not bad cars, it's just who owns it.
No, and it's interesting that you bring that up, because I feel like that's actually part of Volkswagen's problem as well.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously German cars depreciate generally at a higher rate than like a Japanese automobile or something like that. But a lot of people think Volkswagens are inherently unreliable, and I will tell you, mechanically, they're really not, as long as you maintain them well. They do have some issues, with, obviously they're always kind of pushing the boundaries of electronics and technology, and it is supposed to be, kind of a everyman's car. It's not a luxury brand per se. And so there are going to be some cost-cutting measures there, and that is going to inherently, affect the reliability. But I mean, for the most part, they make pretty good engines and actually really good transmissions. I would say that's probably Volkswagen's greatest strength. They are one of the few manufacturers that has refused to go to CVTs, and 90% of the cars that I see that do have problems, I've never seen it be a transmission. I've never seen a Volkswagen with a bad transmission. And that's actually pretty impressive, and I think something that people don't really realize.
Yeah, they're an interesting brand. I mean, you have one now. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're down to one engine block, right? one motor that they can stuff in their whole lineup?
Two. So they
Two?
have a 1.5 and a 2 liter.
Okay.
At least in the States. Obviously, overseas they have other options. But from what they're importing into the States, yeah, they're down to literally only 2 engine options for their entire lineup.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, the engines are reliable when you maintain them. So
That's just how it goes, especially German, engineered, like Toyotas, Hondas are engineered because they know, that, the Americans are never going to change the oil. Well, the Germans don't think that way. They don't think, oh, hey, this is another market, we're going to engineer it to that market. The Germans can't see anything outside of, their own culture, in that being, you service a car when you're told. And that's why those cars are so reliable, but the second you take it to Jiffy Lube or you skip an oil change, start to see some problems.
100%. And it's funny you bring that up. I definitely think that Volkswagen could do a little bit better catering their vehicles to the American market. And I think one of the biggest examples of that is their new ID Buzz, which they had to recall. And my understanding is it's because the third row exceeds the length requirements for only seating 2 people, and that's strictly a United States thing. Is that they literally have a limit on how long the rear seat can be without any interruptions, because they don't want people stuffing a third person back there if there's only 2 seat belts. And that's not an issue for other markets, but it was an oversight on Volkswagen's part. I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know that was a law. I had no clue. And then when that recall came out, it's like, holy cow, and I think that's part of the issue of having overseas manufacturers for automobiles, and is that there are so many rules and regulations in this country that don't exist other places, and you really have to tailor your brand and the models that you're bringing in to each individual country. And I just feel that's a big oversight on a lot of car manufacturers. If they spent more money R&Ding and actually developing a car for each specific market, they could have better success. But I'm sure there's a cost-benefit analysis report going around in all of these companies that basically say it's not worth spending the money to do that. And, I don't know. It's an interesting point. I really wish that there were more car manufacturers like what Chevy and Ford and Dodge used to be, that literally made the car for the American market, and then if other countries wanted it, great, they'd sell them over there. And that's just not how it exists. It's almost on a global platform now.
Yeah, honestly, the third row seat in the in the Buzz is kind of, in a way, German sense of humor. Oh, the Americans are so fat. They need the extra room.
Extra big.
That's them trying to diversify. They just, they just didn't do it correctly. But no, it's crazy how many different rules and regulations you have. Different, amber versus orange turn signals, etc.
Yep.
But as far as drinks go,
oh yeah, what do we got here?
Every episode we're going to try something different. Maybe 2, just depends on the day. But this is Western Reserve. This is a 12-year bourbon. Western Reserve comes from Ohio. And the interesting thing is, so they're taking this Indiana bourbon, they're actually aging it for 12 years in Ohio. Slightly different climate, definitely colder than Indiana, but, should be interesting. What do you get on the nose?
It smells very smooth. A little smoky, but not excessive.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What are you sensing from it?
I get a lot of cedar notes for some reason, which is interesting for a 12-year bourbon. Usually at 12 years they're a little bit darker.
Yeah.
I don't really get the crazy wood sugars going on. I just get cedar notes. I get a little bit of a muddiness going on. Some green apple. I don't see a ton of caramels and vanillas, but it's got a really interesting nose to it. I was at my dad's house and he had this bottle. Brought a little vial back from Nashville to kind of try, so it's pretty good stuff. It's actually got a really nice mouthfeel to it. Really coats well. It's not super oily. The interesting thing, it's coats really well, but then it just sucks back on the finish. It's very dry on the finish. But I get a lot of berries and fruits, but also that cedar pops through. It's kind of buttery. You do get a little bit of the like harsher oak flavor, but the fruits kind of brighten it up a little bit. It just goes to show that Indiana juice isn't bad like people think. That you can do some really cool stuff. What'd you get out of it?
Yeah, so it's definitely initially when it first hits the palate, it's a little bit sweeter than I was expecting.
Mm-hmm.
But then, like you said, it dries out very nicely. I actually really enjoy this.
What do you think the MSRP on this is?
Ooh, $100?
120.
Okay.
I mean, I'd probably pay like 70, 80 for it. I get that you're paying $10 for the year, $10 per year, which is pretty normal rule of thumb. $120 is just a lot, but $80, $90, I think it's a great whiskey. So that's the introduction to what you'll see us be sipping on. But moving on. Interestingly enough, Greg has a background in aviation.
I do.
Went to school for ATF, right?
ATC, air traffic control.
Or I'm sorry, ATF.
Yep.
I don't know why I said F.
Air traffic
ATC.
control and aviation management.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely have been big into aviation. Funny enough, was flying airplanes before I was driving cars.
Mm-hmm.
Had my private pilot's license at 17. Used to have to bum rides to the airport from my friends. Hey, give me a ride to the airport. I'll take us flying.
Mm-hmm.
Thoroughly enjoy aviation. Just once I was in college and actually learning about everything, it was an industry that I had some qualms with, and like kind of the way that everything was run, especially with the amount of federal government control and just some of their decision making I wasn't too keen on, and decided to kind of shift focus from aviation to automobile. But I love planes. I love flying. Bucket list dream of mine is to get my helicopter's license. I would love to fly helicopters. Hands down, probably one of the coolest things I've done in my life that like really impressed me was going on a ride along with a police helicopter.
That would be sick.
It was pretty awesome, and it was basically a little bird. I don't know the official designation, but it's a small helicopter that was used by the military, law enforcement, and obviously the private sector. And it was one of the coolest things I ever did. They literally had the doors off. We responded to a bank robbery alarm, a burning house, a fire that was actually kind of crazy. We had a run-in with a guy with a spotlight flashing us, and we actually did a buzz on him. That was kind of cool. It was just really a cool experience, and it made me appreciate helicopters so much more just for their uniqueness and their capabilities. That's the thing that kind of swayed me away from aviation is there's so much regulation, and there's not a lot of opportunity to go out and do all the crazy things that you see in movies, right? You see fighter jets doing these barrel rolls and all these crazy maneuverings, and it's like in regular general aviation that stuff does not happen. Whereas on the automotive side, there are opportunities to go to racetracks and race days and go drifting and really kind of experience these really impressive manufacturing and things that we have developed as people and push them to their limits. And I really enjoy that concept of being able to do that. And I realized in aviation, unless you're literally like a fighter pilot, and even then the odds are pretty minimal that you'll get to do that stuff, or like work for Red Bull doing all the crazy tricks and stunt stuff, you're never going to experience that. And I feel there was a lot more opportunity in the automotive industry, which is why a lot of my focus shifted as I got older and realized that.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I mean, the FAA doesn't want you to do crazy stuff, so I get it. Safety first. You're up in the sky, but
Of course.
it's a different beast.
And that's the thing. It's like you have to understand with aviation, there's a lot more risk to public as well, right? If something goes wrong up in the air, well, that plane's only going one place. Whereas with automobiles, it's a lot easier to control the setting. You can go to a racetrack. There's racetracks available to the public. So you can put yourself in a controlled, safe setting where you're not going to harm anyone else, and still kind of do some of these things that might not be the safest thing in the world. But it allows, the general public to have access to that to some extent. Aviation, you don't get that luxury.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what's crazy is pull this back up here, just make sure it's still going. What's crazy is like being in the car world, being in that world for 10 years. Interestingly enough, aviation and automotive don't intersect all that much. Like people are either interested in planes or cars. Like you get some that want both, but all of my friends who are pilots for a living, I have a couple friends who work for like Southwest and Delta. All of them want a $5,000 beater to take to the airport, and that's it. Zero interest in cars.
Yep.
One of them drives a Volkswagen Jetta Sportwagen diesel, which is a great car, and he's gonna drive it for the end of eternity. It's this apocalypse vehicle, but it's not like a guy who's up in the air all the time isn't gonna come and come back home and go hit the canyons. It's just and vice versa with driving, but you do get it every once in a while. I'm a buyer for a living, and obviously I can't talk about certain aspects of certain deals, but I've had interesting customers. Like I had a guy a while back in his 80s came in to sell us his car, and he was a fighter pilot in the Navy, and then it ended up being a volunteered civilian Air Force pilot. The guy's like in his 80s, just lost his pilot's license just due to medical stuff, but his daily driver was a Miata. Somehow he ran a Miata track club.
Hey, Miatas are good cars.
Great cars, but you don't see the intersection like people would think in Top Gun, whatever have you. You see it very rarely. That guy though was pretty cool to talk to. And then I've met a few other pilots that are like fighter pilots in the Navy, etc. But it doesn't transition like people think it does.
Yep.
Most car people prefer to stay on the ground, and most aviation people just have fun shuffling people and cargo to and from their destination.
Well, and it's interesting you bring that up. I think a lot of that is actually intentional to some extent. Right?
Oh yeah,
so
100%.
You don't want the guy who's willing to go drift a corner, in a high horsepower vehicle, flying 200 people in an airplane, right? You want the people who are very by the book. I'm not taking any risks. And so I think a lot of that is kind of intentional. I think part of that is the reason I transitioned focus is I'm not a risk taker, at least a big risk taker by any means. But when I was younger, I did some foolish stuff in my car, and I wanted to do that, and I realized that you couldn't really do any of that stuff flying. You had to be very by the book, which I excelled at. I'm fine at doing things by the book, but you don't get any of that sense of adrenaline.
No.
That's the thing that you think about. A lot of people who actually aren't pilots or haven't had an opportunity to go fly, you think flying is going to be this really cool, like adrenaline fueled, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so excited. And the first couple of times it is. And then once you do it over and over and over, and it's the exact same thing every time, you realize it's not an adrenaline thing. It's just very much, we have procedures. It's follow the exact steps. You're doing the exact same thing every single time, because that minimizes the risk for mistakes. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, I feel, when they want to get into aviation, don't understand that. You need to be a methodical, list-driven, I plan out everything type of person to really excel in the aviation industry. And that's not how it's advertised to the public.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And it's, it's funny because people who are in aviation, that's how you have to be safe, but that's just how they naturally are. 100%. It's very much so a natural job. Like I don't run into many pilots and what have you that kind of force themselves into it, as a career. It's, hey, I'm very methodical and I kind of want to do this. I have an interest in this. Whereas, being in the car industry, we see people from all walks of life that kind of force themselves into it,
100%.
I mean,
100%.
One of my mentors in my career was a high school football coach, and then started in car sales, and he's been a GM in the past and all this stuff. You don't see that in aviation. You start in aviation, you finish in aviation. That's kind of how it goes. But
Absolutely.
it's just how they are. So what brought you from air traffic control, everything super planned, logistics, to car sales? Because you could always stay on the ground and do your thing and mess around with your car, and then you don't have your you don't have your by the book per se that drove you crazy in aviation.
Yep.
But like, why car sales versus going into like logistics and using some of that training? Be a freight broker that's a little crazy on the weekends.
That's a great question. So I will say I wasn't actually expecting to fall in love with car sales and the automotive industry the way that I did. I was fresh out of college. I had bills. I needed to make money. The hiring process for even going into air traffic control was not a quick process. And by not a quick process, I mean, once you get out of college, don't expect to actually work in the industry for 2 to 3 years if you want to become an air traffic controller. At least when I was going. So I decided to start selling cars, and I really just kind of fell in love with it. I'm the type of person that likes to learn new things, do new things, meet new people. I really enjoy the consistent change, and the automotive industry brings that. Obviously, selling cars, you're constantly dealing with new people. You're meeting people from all walks of life. You get to sit there and go on, a 20-minute test drive and exchange all sorts of stories and learn about what they've experienced. And then I also found that a lot of the people that I enjoy hanging out with and associating with also have, kind of that love for cars. And I really was associated to that, so going to car meets, meeting new people, and I found that a lot of those people are people I enjoy hanging out with, i.e. the way our friendship started. Right?
Yep.
And so, it's just kind of one of those things where I first started it, didn't plan on doing it, didn't plan on making a career out of it, but really actually ended up enjoying most of the aspects of the industry and the business. And obviously there are some negatives too, especially depending who you work for. And I just found that the enjoyment and fulfillment that I got out of being part of that industry and being part of the automotive movement, I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed it more than when I was in aviation. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
And real quick, our lovely producer, we're still kind of getting the kinks worked out. This is our first time filming, and it was kind of on a whim. Can you check and make sure the camera's still rolling, please? It is? Good.
Perfect.
Just wanted to double check. I'm like, if not, I suppose Spotify it is. But no, absolutely, and it's been a fun career. I mean, you've done everything from selling cars, buying cars, and that's really where Greg and I hit it off too. Is like, you have a couple of people in the car, couple different types of people in the car business, and you're either very good at sales, like you will never promote to a manager because you're just a top salesman. You make more than them. You get the schedule you want. You can do whatever. The GM, you kind of own the GM, but the other option is the people who really want to just promote and work their way up. That 1% of car salesmen that will end up being a general manager one day, and then you've got a couple of branches. Some people go into finance and then go to the desk, and they're very numbers oriented. Some people go into used cars, and the used car guys are a little different. We're usually a little bit more on the nerdy side, and like, we like being creative. We like the numbers, but not necessarily dealing with the customers as much. We just enjoy planning inventory and figuring out how to make stuff work, and and there's those three or four avenues. I fall into like two of them, where I'm a natural used car guy. It's what I do. Like, I love it. I'll sell cars in a pinch, but I just always miss being on the used car side.
I think you have a greater appreciation than most.
That's true.
And that's one thing that I've learned. Like you said, I've held, with the exception of actual like general manager, GSM, I've held almost every position in dealership. I definitely was a used car buyer. I've been in sales. I've been a sales manager. I've been on the finance side of things, even down to like internet director, right? And the one thing I'll say about buying cars that you can really tell if you have a good used car buyer versus someone who is just meeting the requirements is your ability to appreciate unique used cars and understand that, hey, yes, this is going to take a little bit longer to sell, but when you find the right buyer, you will turn a profit.
Yep.
And that's really one of the things I really enjoy about the car business is that being in the industry, you see all sorts of weird stuff. I mean, literally what you sent me the other day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mazda CX-5 SUV, 2016, so not that old, offered a manual transmission.
Yep.
I had no clue.
I didn't either.
Even realize that. I've been in the industry for almost 12 years. I had no clue. And it's finding that unique stuff where it's like, man, there is really going to be that one person that superbly appreciates this.
Yep.
And it's a smaller market. Yeah, it's a targeted market. But that's what makes the job great. It's seeing these things that aren't just mass produced and out there everywhere. And it's like, man, that one person's really going to appreciate that. That's going to be their dream car. The person that buys that car isn't going to just turn around and trade it in 2 to 3 years. They're going to own that thing for the next 10 years. They're going to get every single life out of it that car had to offer. And I really appreciate that.
Yep. Well, absolutely. Yeah, it's a fun kind of skill and hobby to nerd out on.
Yep.
But like, you also can't as a buyer go and just buy everything or just buy something because it's cool. It's gotta make sense. Like, for example, that Mazda, yeah, there's a buyer out there for it, but in this economy, what can we really get it financed for?
100%.
And so you've got to think about the finance guys. You have to think about the sales guys, etc. But it's funny how some of those unique cars you make really good money on for the store, but the interesting thing is it's not how people think. It's kind of a weird, complicated way to explain it. Hi, Kat. She's like, I want to be on this.
Oh yeah.
Hello. Hey, go on. It's one of those things where you kind of have to have a gut. So like I was a used car director at a store, and I had a guy working under me, a younger kid, and the GM told me, like a week into it, hey, you got to train this guy up. We want to promote him. Maybe he'll be a buyer one day, etc. He was basically like doing porter and recon stuff, and I really had more like one-on-one conversations about appraisals and was like talked about things like the finance eligibility, etc. And not necessarily, this is the cut and dry what the algorithm will say you can buy, but more of like, hey, you need to develop your gut because that's what's going to keep you different, And unfortunately, he's kind of strayed away from that. He's a used car manager now, and I'm very proud of him for it. But his inventory is all rental cars, which tells you that he just looks at the algorithm.
Yep, he just looks at the numbers.
Yep. And, as a result, they're probably not doing quite what they should. But
well, and here's the thing. You can still make it work. If you're strictly a numbers guy and that's all you look at, luckily the way that, the U.S. economy is designed and the way that banks look at things kind of dictates some of that.
Yep.
You can make it work. You can still do your job, but that comes 100%. Down again to what I was talking about of the bare minimums, where it's like, you're just looking at the numbers. You're just doing this because it makes sense, but you're not going to attract the kind of clientele that is going to pay you some sort of silly amount of money on the car. And that's why you need a good mix, right? It's not all about just focusing on special unique stuff because you still have to have your bread and butter.
Yep. Oh, 100% you do. It's not all about the unique stuff for sure.
But that's
it's a big mix. It's the fun part.
Job,
absolutely it is, yeah. It's funny, as long as you can stay away, and this is getting probably too nerdy, and we could do a whole episode on used car management, as long as you don't have 20, 30 rental cars, you're different than everybody else, even if they're all, even if you have an Equinox and they have an Equinox, if yours isn't a rental. But anyway, that's the nerdy side of it. But no, I mean, it's fun because you get to think about everything from the fun, unique stuff to, hey, can we finance this? How are we going to sell this? What's our exit plan? You know, like if we have to get rid of it at auction, are we going to lose our rear ends? You know, and other parts of the dealership work a little differently. Finance is thinking about, you know, are we actually...
How much are the banks going to say this car
Yep.
is worth? What will they let me stuff in it? Can I charge? Is there going to be an extended warranty that I can actually sell that's reasonably priced on this car?
Yep.
And that's what was really eye-opening too, is like when I went into the finance side of things, you realize how much of the automotive industry in this country is dictated by the banks.
Yep.
And that was something that, you know, when I was younger and more naive and like just on the selling side, I didn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And having that perspective really makes you kind of realize, all right, so a lot of these cars that are being sold because the bank says
Yep.
it's the right thing to do. You know, and that's the part of the car business that I find kind of soulless. That's the part I'm not in it for. You know, I want the cool, weird, unique stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I want someone to buy that car because they absolutely love it. They're going to have the time of their life with it. It's exactly what they wanted. You know, because growing up as a kid, and just as a young adult, really, in college, you know, I'd look at all these cool cars that I wanted to own, and it's like, you know, I want that crazy rear-wheel drive sports car that I can go out and like actually learn how to drive a rear-wheel drive sports car, you know, and I don't want just the regular day-old commuter, or I want something super unique like that manual Isuzu I really looked at. Right?
Oh yeah, like that was cool.
What a unique car, you know, a manual Isuzu Trooper, like 4-wheel drive, and obviously it was not what it was when it was advertised, which is why I didn't buy it. Because
It happens.
It happens, and but it's like, man, that would have been such a cool car. Like going out and off-roading that thing, you know, taking that out on a trip into the middle of the desert. What an experience, right? Like that would have been so much fun. Taking that on an off-road trip, you know, and just being like, okay, this is what people in 2004 did. You know, it's like having that kind of connection to the way that people were growing up in the past, and that's why I think I've definitely gained more of an affinity for older cars the longer that I've been in the industry.
Yep.
Because you learn to appreciate it more, like, hey, this is all people had access to back then. How did they have to go do these trips? And it's like, that's really eye-opening. It's like, okay, they had to deal with all this. Yeah, no, there's no wireless Android Auto out in the CarPlay telling you where to go. You know, it's like, you either knew where you were going or you took your best guess and hope it worked out. You know?
Oh yeah. The Isuzu was a funny story, actually. So Greg and I worked with each other for a while. It was a lot of fun, and I like when it was slow and I was doing good on calls and didn't have to really, like, you know, it gets
downtime.
Yeah, it gets to the point where you have some downtime, and so I would do one of my favorite things, which we might do on this podcast one day, which is literally just go on AutoNation. Their whole motto is like keep everything, and just filter. I'd go to the used cars and I'd filter highest mileage to low, and then I'd filter age oldest to new, and you'd see some wild stuff, you know. And I would always like print them out or like show Greg on my phone because I thought it was fun, and he was like kind of interested in the same kind of weird ass cars. It was fantastic. You know, I would show other people at work and they'd just look at me like, why would anybody want to go buy a 90s Ford Taurus? You know, I'm like, because it's got 55,000 miles. That's why. And it has 26 service history records. Anyway,
Taurus was actually a good car too.
They were. But anyway, that kind of got you on the train of like just looking for like really bizarre cheap cars. And, you know, when people think cheap cars, they all want a Camry for like $8,000. No, we look for like weird crap, you know?
Yep.
And so he found this Isuzu. It was, what was it, a 97, 98?
Yeah, I think it was a 98 Isuzu Trooper.
The one with the little barn door in the back?
Yep.
It was
yes,
four-wheel.
It did have the barn doors.
The 5-speed, it was a 4-door, or I'm sorry, 5-speed 4-wheel drive.
Yep. And I think that's back, it was a body on frame, you know, and it was basically a truck, but an SUV.
Yep.
Yeah, that thing was so cool. It's just, it was not.
Yep.
Whoever pictured that car, props to you, sir. Like, you did a good job making it look a lot nicer than it was.
And one of our coworkers that we ended up, like the three of us kind of hanging out all the time, Greg and I were like freaking out about this Isuzu, and she was just looking at us like, what the heck? Like, why are you so excited about this $4,000 Isuzu?
Like, we're crazy.
You know? And keep in mind, we're working like, bell to bell, which means open to close, a couple days a week, like, probably 70-hour weeks. And on his day off, instead of doing chores and laundry, he goes and looks at this Isuzu Trooper.
I had to see it. For $4,000. Come on.
And the pictures look great,
It
but
did.
apparently it wasn't.
No, it was not.
Didn't he say like the transfer case was out? And all
Transfer case was busted. It definitely was not nearly as clean as they made it to look out to be. It did drive decent, and realistically, if the transfer case and four-wheel drive still functioned, I probably would have still considered buying it.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, you don't have a 4x4 Isuzu Trooper. You have a two-wheel drive Isuzu Trooper that you are advertising as a four-wheel drive, and that takes away from some of just the history and lore that I was trying to relive.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that it still wasn't going to be able to go out there and do what I wanted to do, because I really wanted to buy that thing and just go trek it out into the middle of the desert. And I would have been smart about it. I would have had a friend follow me in another 4x4 capable vehicle. If it died, so be it. Like, for $4,000, I was willing to experience that.
Yeah, why not?
But it didn't work out. It wasn't the right thing. So be it.
Weren't those a Honda Passport, or am I thinking of something else?
No, I think you. No, I don't know. I'd have to look.
I could have sworn they were the Passport.
It might have been.
It was something, or not Passport. Gosh, what was the '90s SUV? The Passport in the '90s was the little van. It was another Honda. This would have been pre-pilot.
Because I actually got to test drive one of those.
Nice.
Because one of my we had one on the lot. It was the Honda. Oh gosh, was it a Passport? It might have been a Passport.
I could have sworn that was a van-looking thing. Maybe it wasn't though.
No, the Passport had this weird angled back end. It was an SUV.
Yeah.
And obviously they've brought it back now since, and it's not what it used to be.
No.
But dude, the original Honda Passport was a great off-road truck. I mean, it was legit body-on-frame truck.
The OG Passport was like a one-seat UTV thing. I don't know if you remember those. They were all red with like a blue seat.
No, I don't.
It was like an '80s version of a Polaris RZR, and they all sell on Bring a Trailer for like $5,000. But they're cool. It's simple.
And that's the thing. Yeah. It's just like the weird, unique stuff that they don't make anymore, because it's not what every single person wants.
Yep.
It's like, and that's one thing I will say about the car industry is it has gotten way more focused on, okay, what can we sell everybody? And I feel like back in the day, it was more like, okay, what does that one person want? And what does that one person want? It was definitely more individual.
Yeah, did you know that Chrysler in the 80s, 70s or 80s sold a snow machine? It wasn't like a proper, like what you think of as like a snow runner. It was like it had a ski on the front fork, but it had a little track in the back. It was like a basically chopped in half snowmobile.
Interesting.
And they sell on Bring a Trailer for like $2,500 because nobody wants them, but they're cool. Like, I have a Chrysler snow machine.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
I love weird crap like that. So like, when we worked together, I owned a 2001 Jetta with 185,000 miles on it. It was a manual, it was 5-speed, but the car was like near mint. A little bit of a sagging headliner, but it was like old man tan, zero paint issues. The interior was pretty nice. Everything worked, the CD player, the radio. And, owned it for a short while and sold it. But I've also, back when I worked at the Land Rover store, I almost bought a bike from the BMW dealership that had been sitting there for like a year in their parts department. I wish I would have. I kicked myself for not. It was like a $1,600 bike. And, these car manufacturer bikes are like so bikes, but just hyped up with a badge.
Yep.
But, the GM was going to give it to me for like $950. I mean, the tires were like on it for like 4 years at this point. And because it sat in BMW's in a warehouse somewhere, and then it ended up at the parts department. The reason I wanted it is because it was painted in, they don't make this color anymore. At the time, it was painted in a color called Austin Yellow. which is like the mustardy color that you could get on the M4 and the M3, but only on the M cars. And it was just a 10-speed bicycle, but it was painted an actual BMW Austin yellow. And I thought this thing would be the coolest thing to ride around on, but I was also afraid of it getting stolen. But it's like, you also know that you're the only guy in a legit OEM M painted bicycle in Austin yellow. Yeah. You know, like you're the guy. There's, you're never going to find another one. And I regret it. I'm sure somebody bought that bike. I've never seen it. Not that I would, but it's funny. You walk into Porsche, you walk into Mercedes, all their bikes are like white. And they did that. They did Yas Marina Blue. I almost bought that one, but I thought the Austin Yellow was cooler. Yas Marina is like the really light blue they had, like really light on the M3s when they, what would that be, the F80 generation? 2015-ish, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Where you could still get a manual in an M3.
Yeah.
Still can now, but I mean, back then it was a smaller car. But I do regret buying that bicycle. I really regret that. Regret not buying that bicycle. I actually ended up buying a really nice 40-mile-per-hour e-scooter.
Hey.
I put 3,000 miles on it in about 10 months, and then I sold it. Because that's what I do. I buy them, I ride them for a bit, I sell them on Marketplace and rinse and repeat. It's like owning a car, I sell it right before the warranty's out, and I'll buy the thing for $1,500. I'll sell it for $12, and to get 3,000 miles out of it, it's not bad.
Well, you don't have to tell me about that. I did the math the other day. I've only been driving for 19 years, and I think I've owned 20 automobiles.
Nice. As you should.
Obviously a lot of it's like weird, older stuff, not crazy expensive, not huge upfront cost. And it's one of those things. I'll drive it around for 4 or 5 months, and then, as long as you take care of it, you know how to market it, and you're okay doing private party sales and all the work that goes into that,
Excuse me.
9 times out of 10, you can get your money back out of the asset.
Yep.
5 months of depreciation on a used car. If you know what you're doing, you know how to sell it on the private market, you can go buy something like that, drive it around for 5 months, and sell it for bare minimum, at least what you bought for it. Sometimes even for a profit, if you have the ability to clean them up right, if you have the ability to do some servicing and basic maintenance stuff. But I wanted to tell you about this because you're going to get a kick out of this. I'm taking in a trade tomorrow.
Ooh.
Tomorrow, of course, is my day off, but
you know how it goes.
I'm willing to go to work and go take this trade in because I actually have to go drop the car off at the customer's house and I have to pick it up.
It's a fun day.
And I'm not going to disclose too much details for the privacy of the customer, but I'm picking up a Chrysler Crossfire.
Yes!
That has a V8 Mercedes engine dropped in it.
Whoa, okay.
Because the Chrysler Crossfire is a Mercedes-Benz car.
Yeah, they're SLKs or CLKs.
As a Chrysler.
Yeah.
And this particular customer decided to invest the money into throwing in a V8 Mercedes motor because a lot of the compatibility makes it a pretty simple process.
That's incredible.
And, obviously just like any unique car or that's been worked, there's issues with it. It's not like AC works or stuff like that, but still, it's a V8 Chrysler Crossfire. Dang well I'm never going to see another one of those in my entire life. So I'm actually kind of excited to have to work tomorrow.
And I'm sure it got traded in on like a Jetta SE. It's funny how that works. I mean, the guy who traded in the manual CX-5 bought a truck. And it's like, okay, it's so left field. That's awesome. Crossfires are a good deal. You can still find nice ones for like $5-6 grand. You can get the SRTs for like 10-11 retail. Yep. And I think that it's a great place to park your money because they're pretty reliable. They're fun to drive. Own it for a year or two, sell it for what you paid for it, or buy an SRT and hope it goes up a little bit because that's basically an SLK 55 AMG. 100%. Or no, not 55. I'm sorry, 32. It was based on the previous platform. But I think it's a good place to park your money. A fun sports car, and they're in good shape.
I would agree. The fact that our dealership was even willing to take this thing in on trade, I think that goes to show
things are slow. Yeah.
They knew, and obviously a car like that, we're not going to retail.
No.
Right. As a dealership, we're sending that to auction. We're letting someone else deal with the headache of selling that thing.
Dumpster fire to retail that.
For sure.
Yeah.
And no bank's going to finance that. You know, that's a cash only car.
Mm-hmm.
But whoever ends up buying that, I know is going to get a kick out of it. And realistically, it's probably going to be someone in the industry. It's probably going to be some dude with a dealer's license who's like, I got to have that.
Gotta smoke tires in my Chrysler. How we looking on the video, and how we looking on time? 50? All right.
Wow.
Go for another 10 and see what happens.
Yeah, sounds good. I didn't.
We're just playing.
Time flew by.
Right. We're just playing with ideas here, so you'll have to excuse us.
Well, and I've definitely never done any sort of video stuff. Like
Me either.
I've never done YouTube, anything like that. So I'm learning as we go about watching the camera, talking to the audience.
Yep, I'm bad at that.
Oh, it's hard for me to look at people when I talk to them because, for whatever reason, whether it's undiagnosed autism or something like that, if I'm actually listening and comprehending everything you're saying, I'm not looking at you. I'm looking off out into space because that's when I actually recognize and acknowledge everything.
There you go. Yeah. In an hour should be a good benchmark to see kind of what works, and I think it'll be fun. We just have a great chemistry for it. That Crossfire is going to be sick.
Oh, dude, I'm pumped. I'm low-key, like...
Did he base it off an SRT or off a base one?
It's a base. It's a base
that makes
Chrysler
sense.
Crossfire, and he basically turned it into, like, an AMG.
My favorite quote from the Top Gear days of, like, that Crossfire video was Jeremy Clarkson said that the back end looks like a dog when it's doing its business, and I couldn't agree more.
So accurate.
But like, it was a weird. Chrysler had a weird design thing going on at that point, you know, because the Germans were trying to enter it.
When they were still making the PT Cruiser.
Yeah, the Germans tried too hard to like take control of the company. It didn't go very well. But the crazy thing is, so like.
Yeah,
Stellantis is so screwed. Actually, at a mutual Dodge store that you and I both know, I was talking to their internet director, and my gosh, it's been slow over there.
Yeah.
I mean, they still have 23 Grand Wagoneers.
Every time I drive by the Dodge dealership, it's just a full parking lot of brand new cars.
Nothing changed, yeah.
And I never see anyone there looking at them.
Well,
yeah, I know, it's like every time I'm standing out, because they're right next to where I work.
Yeah.
Every time I'm standing out there, I'm just like, what? Do you guys even test drive these? Like, I never see anyone even moving these cars.
They just have a lot. It's not that store, it's just Stellantis in general.
Exactly.
I mean,
Stellantis is in a lot of trouble. I mean, they're... Yeah, dude, Stellantis, Nissan. I really think it's just going to be a big pivotal shift point coming soon for the whole car industry and a lot of these car manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and at the end of the day, it's going to stink for some people. You know, some people are going to lose jobs and stuff like that. But just like any other economy, any other industry, change is always good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's if a couple manufacturers close their doors, I promise you there will be other manufacturers that benefit from it or even come onto the scene, and it's you know, it is going to be beneficial in the long run, and that's really the way you have to look at it. So.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you got to think, like 10 years ago when I started in the industry, my first job was at that point FCA, but now Stellantis store, and you could buy a new Patriot with crank windows for like $15,900.
Yep.
You know, and back at that time when you had bad credit and you needed an SUV, you got a Patriot, you got a Renegade, you got a Journey, Compass, exactly, and that's where they positioned themselves. Not even, you know, barely a decade later, now even a Compass is like $35,000, and you've got Grand Wagoneer, and you've got Grand Cherokee 4xe. I mean, my dad's got a Grand Cherokee 4xe, and sticker on it's like $85 for a Grand Cherokee, and they went to 180 too quickly.
100%.
And
they went from catering to more of the budget clientele to catering towards people with money to spend. Way too fast. I mean, they literally tried to 180 their brand, and it has not been successful for them.
No, it has not. And you know, this is why my dad said he wanted one. I'm like, you gotta lease it. You gotta lease it. Certain cars you own, certain cars you lease,
100%.
and certain cars you know would be a dumpster fire to own. So like, 85 sticker. He's probably going to be mad at me talking about it. I'm not going to talk about the specifics per se, but basically it's a 4xe Summit Reserve. They don't make those anymore. He's got a 21 speaker Macintosh stereo. He's got night vision. He's got massage seats, heated in front and in all rows. Oh, sorry, cat.
That's the perfect car to lease, though.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you get all the cool stuff without having to worry about it depreciating.
Exactly. And it was a 4xe, so he had a $7,500 credit plus ton of other incentives from GM, or I'm sorry, from Stellantis. And funnily enough, because it was a 4xe, it leased cheaper by about 50, $60 a month than a 66 sticker gas car, gas Grand Cherokee. But also, at the time, BMW, who is the king of leasing, an X5 with a 65 sticker was still more than what he's paying, which is crazy. Wow. But it's like, that's how much they have to discount it. But you look at that car now, about 6 months ago, I was curious, so I looked it up. I saw a 24 4xe, year old, with 1,100 miles. It wasn't quite like his. It was maroon, so that didn't help it. But it was an 84 sticker, 1,100 miles. You want to guess what they were retailing it at?
What?
45?
Yep.
After a year. I mean, look at the Hornet. Look at the Alfa Romeo Tonale or whatever the other one is called.
I think the biggest struggle for the EV market right now, too, is that you have electric vehicles with extremely high MSRPs, and then until recently, you had a large tax credit.
Yep.
And then manufacturers were doing discounts on top of it. So you go from a situation where you have this extremely high MSRP vehicle. Well, even at the time of sale, a lot of people were getting 10 plus grand off.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, what's that going to do to the market? It's going to tank it. So, and then you have the regular depreciation to deal with as well. You have range anxiety of people, battery degradation worries. One of the biggest things people don't realize is technology. Technology is constantly evolving.
Yep.
So if you spend the money to get the best tech right now, you're going to lose the most in depreciation because in 3 years, the technology that comes out is going to exceed it in every way. And so when you spend the money on these super technologically advanced vehicles, hands down, you are guaranteeing you are going to take a larger depreciation than the other ones, than cars that have, basic functions. And that's why if I were to ever own an EV, which I'm open to, I've actually considered it, I would lease or buy pre-owned, right? If you're going to buy an EV, those are my two recommendations. Find a good deal on a used one that's not too old and hasn't been abused, or lease a brand new one and make sure A, it's going to work for you, your family, your lifestyle, and then B, you don't have to worry about buying a $60,000 car that in 3 years is worth $25,000.
Yep. Or, it's an exaggerated situation, or be the Fisker Ocean, which is now worth zero. And they were like 50 grand new. Yep. Anyway, that was a year ago. But we'll end on this. What are your quick thoughts on the possibility of the EV tax credit going away? How do you think that's going to affect?
Okay, so I'm actually glad you brought this up. So, okay, is it gonna potentially initially hurt the sales of EVs? Yes, but back to what I was just talking about, I actually think it's going to be more beneficial for the market in the long run.
I'd agree.
Because you're not offering these huge discounts on brand new EVs, which means manufacturers are going to have to either lower the production cost and therefore lower the price of EVs, or they're not going to be able to sell them because people aren't going to spend that extra money to buy one. So in reality, I think it's actually going to push production, manufacturing, all of that to a point where it actually needs to be, because I don't think we're there yet.
Yep.
I don't think EVs are effectively, the cost to produce an electric vehicle is not where it needs to be in the market for them to actually own a large majority market share. And I think by reducing or eliminating the tax credit, you're actually going to push these manufacturers to spend extra money into R&D so that they can get their production costs down. Then that's kind of my take on it.
I'd agree 100%. And I think the other thing on the consumer side, EVs really brought the cheap customers out because, $7,500 tax credit. And really the only guaranteed way that you even qualify is to lease it because there's so many loopholes. 100%. But I I think it's going to take a lot of those customers out, and it's going to allow you to 6 months from now, it's going to hurt, but eventually it's going to turn it into another product. And I think that's going to help because now it's just another product in the portfolio. It's not being heavily pushed.
Yep.
It's not bringing out the crazy customers. It's not, we're not seeing used cars tank because people just want the tax credit. I think that, down the road, it could kind of level out. I don't think they're ever going to outsell ICE per se, but I think it'll at least
not
level
with the
out.
current technology.
No, not at all.
Not with what's out there right now. But I think it's going to be a good stepping stone to push innovation in that market. And I think a lot of people just want to look at it one-sided, but at the end of the day, I think it is actually going to be beneficial for that market.
Absolutely. And I'll end on this. I mean, consumer confidence is big, and just like any manufacturer, anything, like I got a thing in the mail from Wells Fargo the other day, $400 if I open a checking account. That they're incentivizing because it's slow. They're incentivizing because they need the business, just like a 0% APR through whatever manufacturer. They're incentivizing, and then once the sales pick up, now your new special rates 2.9 and 3.9, et cetera.
Yep.
So I think that's going to happen with the EV because they pushed it so hard that kind of pushed consumer confidence down. So we'll see what happens. They're fine as a product, but that's neither here nor there. I do think it'll help to take that away down the road. But that's our time, and I had a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to doing some of these.
This was a blast.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you guys had a blast.
Coming.
Let us know what you think, all right?
Thank you.
Thank you.